unions and social organisations joining forces to protest against the radical economic policies.
There's been no increase in pensions, no pay rise for teachers.
We need to win here to continue the process of change in Argentina.
140%. That's the yearly inflation rate that once hit Argentina. Can you imagine the fear of watching your savings lose more than half their value in just 1 year? For years, Argentina relied on Messi to save games on the pitch. But this time, the hero isn't wearing number 10. It's President Javier Milei. But one man's promise to make a 30% budget cut changed everything in just a few months. In May 2025, the monthly inflation rate has dropped to 1.5%. This isn't just a story about the economy. It's a record of a bold challenge that overturned the impossible.
This vote in the province of Buenos Aires, which is Argentina's most populous, was seen as a bellwether for the national midterm race in late October, where Milei's party needs to perform well.
But while the economy shows hope, politics tell a harder story. In Buenos Aires province, Milei's party just lost a local vote by a wide margin. After that, markets fell and the peso got weaker. It doesn't end his presidency, but it makes the fight for reforms much tougher before the October midterms. Now, let's step back and see how Argentina reached this point. To truly understand the miracle happening in Argentina, you have to look back. Over a century ago, this nation was one of the wealthiest in the world. Its fertile plains, known as the Pampa, made it a leader in beef and wheat exports. People from all over Europe chose to immigrate to Argentina, seeing it as the land of opportunity, a place that rivaled even the United States. But in the 20th century, a different story began. The country fell into a dangerous cycle of political instability and terrible economic policies. Military leaders and populist politicians took turns running the government, each making the same fatal mistake. They believed they could solve problems by simply printing more money. Imagine a government that needs cash. Instead of collecting taxes or attracting investment, it just fires up the printing press. This floods the economy with new money, making each existing note less valuable. This is the recipe for inflation. And for Argentina, it was a recipe they kept following year after year, decade after decade. The result was a disaster. From the 1970s to the 2000s, the country was hit by one hyperinflation crisis after another, with rates reaching a mind-boggling 5,000% in 1989. The country defaulted on its foreign debt 9 times in its history. This constant boom and bust cycle destroyed businesses, made it impossible for families to save for the future, and turned a once thriving nation into an economic cautionary tale. By 2023, the situation was at its worst in recent memory, with inflation over 140%. Just when it seemed like Argentina had no way out, the script was flipped. In just 1 year, the country has achieved 3 incredible things that were unthinkable just a short time ago.
When it comes to the Argentinian economy, there are broadly 2 big problems facing Milei at the moment. One, Argentina's recovery has apparently stalled.
First, inflation is falling fast. The crazy, unpredictable price hikes have slowed down, giving people a chance to breathe.
We can affirm, as we have done many times before, and despite the temporary turbulence, that the worst is over.
Second, the government's budget is no longer in the red. For the first time in over a decade, they are actually spending less money than they are taking in. This fiscal surplus is a sign that the government has stopped its old destructive habits. And third, the country is selling more to the world than it's buying. It has a massive trade surplus, bringing in a ton of much-needed foreign money. These aren't just small wins. They are a massive U-turn for an economy that was headed for a wall. But how did they pull it off?
It's been 1 year since Argentina elected the libertarian Javier Milei as president, embracing his promise of shock therapy to boost the struggling economy.
So, how did they do it? The first and most important step was to turn off the money printer. Think of it like a broken water hose spraying money everywhere. The old government just let it run. President Milei's government shut it off. They did this with a shock to the system. They cut government spending by over 30%. They stopped big public projects, froze hiring, and reduced subsidies for things like electricity and transportation. It was painful, but it sent a clear message. We will not print more money to fix our problems. This simple message was the anchor that stopped inflation. Once people believed the government would stop printing money, they didn't have to keep raising prices as fast. The crazy cycle of hyperinflation began to slow down. The second big win was fixing the country's money system. For years, Argentina had many different exchange rates. It was a mess. It was like trying to pay for something with 3 different types of money, and no one knew which was the real one. This made it very hard for businesses to get the parts they needed from other countries. President Milei's government began to remove these rules, making it easier for foreign money to come in and out of the country. With a new loan from the IMF, they built a strong reserve of foreign cash. This gave them the power to make their currency more stable and trustworthy. Now, businesses can plan for the future without worrying if the price of their parts will double overnight.
President Javier Milei visited the fair on Saturday and delivered on a long-awaited promise: the reduction of some export taxes on key agricultural products.
The government's hard work was also helped by some good luck. After a terrible drought in 2023, Argentina's farming industry had a huge comeback. They started exporting a massive amount of grain again, bringing in a ton of foreign money.
The inauguration of a pipeline that will transform Argentina's energy sector. By transporting gas from Vaca Muerta, one of the largest shale oil and gas reserves in the world located in the Patagonia region.
At the same time, the country's energy industry, especially from a giant shale field called Vaca Muerta, started making more money from selling oil and gas than it spent on buying it. For the first time in over a decade, Argentina was a net energy exporter. These two things helped fill the country's bank accounts with foreign money, which made the currency even more stable. It was a perfect storm of internal reform and external good fortune. These big changes weren't just for the government, they also helped people and businesses. The government removed old, complex rules that were getting in the way.
Since the elimination of rent control laws a month ago, new people have started arriving here. A lot more families are going to move here with this situation. Things will get much worse.
For example, a law that made it impossible for landlords to raise rents was scrapped. In the short term, prices went up, but soon more people put their homes up for rent. This created more choices for renters. For businesses, the government removed rules that made it hard to import goods. Now, factory owners can get the parts they need faster. The supply chain logjams are clearing up. All these things didn't happen by chance. They are all linked. The government's actions created a powerful chain reaction. First, they fixed the budget, which brought down inflation. Second, they fixed the currency, which made trade easier. Third, a good harvest brought in a lot of foreign money. And fourth, all of this together led to more economic activity and growth. This isn't just one good story, it's a bunch of good stories all happening at the same time. But this impossible story isn't a fairy tale.
Exigimos abajo el tarifazo. El nivel de ajuste es brutal en todos los sectores con salarios congelados.
The changes have been incredibly painful for many people. Public transport prices went up and energy bills went up. The government laid off public workers. There have been big protests against these tough new rules. Inflation spiked in the first months. It squeezed wallets hard. But for most people, the promise of an end to hyperinflation was worth the pain. They've been through this before, and this time, there is a glimmer of hope that the crazy ride is finally over. You might have heard about dollarization, the idea of making the US dollar the country's official currency. Many people think this is what President Milei did, but that's a mistake. He hasn't done it yet. He and his team know that you can't just change the money without a plan. The first steps were to fix the budget and currency rules. You have to clean the house before you can bring in the new furniture. This is a careful process, and the goal is to make the peso so stable that people don't even need to think about using dollars.
Argentina's markets climbed on Monday with the peso hitting a historic low. The country's benchmark stock index fell 10.5%. An index of the Argentine stocks traded on U.S. exchanges lost more than 15%.
The people who move big money around the world, the investors, are watching closely. For them, Argentina is a huge bet. They are looking at 4 main things: the budget, the currency, the new rules, and if the good luck from exports will last. So far, they like what they see. Argentine stocks and bonds have ranked among the best performing assets globally, even when adjusting for inflation and currency risk, a sign that some institutional investors are cautiously optimistic about Argentina's economic path. This doesn't mean everything is perfect, but it does show that the people with money believe in Argentina's future. It's the first step before real-world investments start to flow in. So, what happens next? The government has a clear plan to make sure this recovery isn't just a short-term fix. First, they want to make taxes simpler and offer big benefits for new investments. Second, they will continue to focus on energy and agriculture to make sure foreign money keeps flowing in. And third, they have to prove that the new rules are here to stay, that the laws won't change every time a new president comes to power. This is the biggest key to long-term success. So, the real impossible thing that Argentina did wasn't just to become a booming economy in a single year. The real miracle was to stop a 20-year slide into ruin, to turn the whole system around, and to build a solid foundation for the future. This was a story of a bold government that closed the money tap, fixed the currency, took advantage of a little luck, and started to remove the friction that was holding the country back. They showed the world that a bad economy isn't a permanent thing. It can be fixed. It just takes a lot of tough decisions and, most importantly, political will. So, do you think this shock therapy could work in your country? Let me know what you think in the comments below.